Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So this is just a video to fix a few issues that I have noticed you guys comment. So for starters, there's this main issue here. If I go to the responsive view on this thing and click on the menu, when I try to click on this, the drop down that comes up is this one. So regardless which drop down I click, this one is the one that comes up. The mega menu works just fine. So I have a suspicion that if I added two mega menus, this would be the exact problem I would be facing. And no matter how many drop downs I added, probably it would still just be opening the first one. So let's do a little investigation to see what's going on here. All right. So I am in my project folder here and plugins, of course. And this plugin is the main menu plugin because that's the one we are working on right now. Okay, so to solve this problem is actually very easy. I only noticed how to solve this because I have experience in this field. So experience is very important because you see here there is this input and it's a checkbox. So I'm guessing this checkbox is used to keep the drop down open or closed, because once you click on a checkbox, you can use the checked, what do you call that, pseudo, just like we use hover. You can use the checked state to keep something open using CSS without having to use JavaScript. So I'm guessing this is what's happening because I'm seeing an input of checkbox here. Not really sure if that's true, but I can take a calculated guess here because I've used this method before. So I'm guessing that's what's happening. So if you notice here, there's an ID of show drop, right? And then there's a 4 here for this label, which says show drop. So which means this one is targeting this. So when I click on this label that has the title, I'm actually switching on a checkbox, switching it on and off. And then that checkbox will display whatever is below it or whatever is down here or something. And it will probably, the state of the checkbox here switches on this part down here. This is the unordered list. So the reason why the mega menu can work alongside the drop down is because the input here has a different ID. This ID is the same as this one and very different from this one. So this is why this can work separately to this. So this gives us a clue on how to solve the problem. So it just means we need unique IDs for each pair of label and checkbox. So it's easy to put unique identifiers for these because these things are from the database, which means they have a primary key, and that key we know is unique. So all we have to do is just put that unique value on these names here so that they match every time. So fingers crossed that this is going to actually work because I haven't tested it. This is just a hint I have. So let's put ID over here like so. So this will make sure that the ID has a number and the exact number here, which means these two will match, but this won't be the same for the next item. So let's do the same thing over here as well. For the mega menu, let's do link, and then we say ID and close that. Okay, so these are the only drop downs here we have, and let's check it out. So I'm going to refresh this, fingers crossed, and let's try this out. That didn't work at all. Now it seems like none of these actually work at all. Okay, so this is deeper than I thought actually. So let me go here and inspect to see what's happening. Show drop 5. And this one is matching the, let's see, 4. Where is the 4 here on the label? Yeah, there, show drop down 5. That's the ID for 5. Okay, cool. But let's see why this has not worked. So maybe the CSS has been disturbed by changing these names. So let's investigate a little bit. So I'm going to grab this. I want to try and see if there's any CSS that's associated with that. And sure enough, there is. So that is definitely not cool. So we have a dilemma here going on. Let's see. Now, this is the advantage of classes, because if we had classes, we would put several classes here, but in this case, we have IDs that are being used for the CSS. Now, the thing is, labels only follow the ID. When we say for, this is literally for an item with that ID. So we shouldn't change this. However, I want to keep the CSS for these things here. So what I'm going to do is create a class over here. So I'm going to say class is equal to, and we're going to say show dropdown like that. So I'm going to do the same thing here and do show dropdown. That way we have a class for our CSS, but then we maintain these IDs that have numbers for the purposes of doing this, right? Okay, well, fingers crossed that this will work at all. So let's see. Let's add another class here on this other one, and let's do this. We'll say show mega like that. Alrighty then. So since we've added that class over here, let's do the same over here. Show mega like that. Okay, so now just by doing that, we don't solve any problems at all. Yeah, because those classes do not exist. Now, we just have to make sure that they're actually, we turn these into classes. So I'm going to copy that. Previous search. So wherever I see this show drop down, I should, oh, so there's only one place that this is happening. Okay, so actually this is the thing. So it checks for the checked here and then shows the, yeah, so actually it is how it works. So let's just change these hashes into dots to represent classes instead, like that. Okay, so let's refresh. It should work this time, fingers crossed. There we go. There we go. So that kind of solves the problem we were after here. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, it's always a good idea whenever you finish making your plugin to actually remove things and act like this is your first time creating this plugin or wanting to use the plugin, and then see what kind of errors come up, because that's how you know that your plugin is actually independent. So the other complaints I received were as follows. Let's see. So if I go to the same, if I now change that to false, something that's not supposed to happen happens. So does it? No. I guess. Okay, so false. Okay, so I guess that works just fine as intended. I got a complaint that when you turn this to false, it actually creates an error that this config file is broken or something like that. But I didn't test that. This is the first time I'm testing those things. So apparently that is not an issue. So moving on. So what I want us to do now is to delete everything. So we have a migration file here. All right, so I want us to drop this menus table here and then start afresh and see what kind of errors we might encounter. So I'm going to refresh this, and we imagine this is something we are activating for the first time. So I'm going to open this folder, the main project folder. And let me delete the source files here. Okay. So then I'm going to get a command line window, change my directory to that, clear the screen. I'm going to do PHP Thunder, and then let's do, I actually forgot what commands to use here. So I'm just going to press enter here so I can see something, and there's rollback. Okay, so that's the one we want. So PHP Thunder, and then we say migrate rollback, and we have to be careful which folder we tell it to do that in. So main menu and press enter. So now it says table menus deleted successfully. Okay, that is great. At the same time, we want to delete all the files. Where do I get that? Okay, so if we go to plugins and main menu over here, and we go to uploads here, there are all these files here that were part of the menu. So I'm going to delete all these guys so that we have a clean slate. Now, if I refresh, there we go. We get missing database tables. That's the one that's missing. Okay, great. So let's run our migration now to get that to work. So I'm going to say PHP Thunder migrate and main menu. So to run all migrations in that particular folder. And with that, we have our table. So let's see what happens when we refresh. And now we get this error here. So that's how you test to see if your plugin is truly portable. So you can do this for all the plugins that you've created that need tables, so you can see how they behave when the table is empty. So here we have array merge as the function that is causing problems, and this one is on line 80 in the main menu plugin.php file. Okay, so that's an easy fix. Let's go to main menu plugin.php. Line 80 is where the problem is. So line 80 is over here. So what is it complaining about? It's very important to learn to read these errors and understand what they're trying to say, because they actually give you a clue on why the error occurred. So a fatal error just means the script had to stop, it couldn't continue. Otherwise, if it's a warning, it can go ahead and run even with an error. But a fatal error is just that, fatal. So argument number 2 must be of type array. A boolean was given instead. So it says boo given, which means it received a boolean, but what it needs is an array. Okay, so that's easy enough to understand, and that's argument number 2. So when we are running this function, there's argument number 1 and argument number 2. So it's just telling us that this particular argument is a boolean. And the reason it's a boolean is because our database returns false when there are no results. It does not return an empty array. So where does rows come from in this case? It comes from here. Now there are several ways you can fix this. You could put an if statement here and that says only merge when there is an actual value here. Or what we could do is, actually that doesn't work. What I wanted to do was something like this. Now this would work sometimes, but not in this case, I think. No, not in this case. Now the reason this doesn't work is because this only checks to see if the item is null or does not exist. It doesn't check for true or false. For that, you may have to use that single quotation here, but instead of doing it in here, we could do it outside here. So rows is equal to something, right? But then we can equate it to something else again. We can say if this thing is empty, right? If rows is empty, which in this case empty will return true if it's false, we can put the question mark and say if it's empty, let's set it to an empty array. Otherwise, full colon, let's set it back to rows itself, like that. This will just make sure that always rows is either an empty array or an array. It just makes sure that this is always an array. Now we don't need to do this for links because it comes in, I suppose, as an array already. Oh, does it? Now, just to be safe, you could do this on both. You can just say links like that. It doesn't hurt to do that, just to make sure that you don't get any more errors on this particular case. So now if I refresh, we should have everything we wanted and things are back to normal. Okay, so we have our home page, we have our drop down that leads us to where we want. All right, guys, so this is how it goes. Now, with all this learning that you've done here, it should be easy to fix problems that you encounter. So just test your plugins, see what I missed, because obviously I can't manage to add every single line of code that is required. Sometimes I may miss something and it may cause errors for your situation. Just fix that to make your plugins better. So the advantage of this whole system is that over time your plugins get better and better because you're going to fix all problems that arise depending on the situation you find. And for every project that you make, you improve on your plugins for the next project that you're going to make. And this really, really saves you time in the long run, because if you're making a lot of websites like I do, I work on so many websites at a time, this method has really saved my life because I can push out a website in the shortest period of time. But of course, there are websites that are always new, that you haven't done before, and those will need new plugins, and those are the ones that really take the longest time. But for basic functionality like login and sign up, those will always be there for you. So hopefully you've learned something new here. We'll proceed to create more plugins. I think we've got like 4 more plugins to make before I completely ignore this particular project. All right, guys, so I'm going to see you in the next plugin creation tutorial.